to welcome Will Derryberry to this month's passenger profile, and I've got to say, I think you should have a band called the Traveling Will Derryberrys.
I think you're right. Or the Willie D and the Dingleberries. I don't know, something.
You've never used that one?
Oh, I had a Costco card for months that said, and I didn't even know it. William T. Dingleberry was my name on it for months. Gave it to the people, and they're like they take my card, they're like, ugh, put it down, and I'm like, wow, why so cold. And for months. And then one day we were going in, my wife Michelle, she goes, hey, look at your card. And even the picture, I'm like kind of looking at the side of my eye, and it says William T. Dingleberry. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. I have the card somewhere, but yeah.
Oh man,
William T.
that's awesome.
Dingleberry.
Yep. Well, all this came about because I've met you at the road rally and have known about you and have edited your member success story things for years. But Liz
Yep.
came to me on August 8th. You had been exchanging an email with Liz from our member services team and said, hey, Liz, I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt thanks for all the help and support Taxi has provided over the past 5 years. The Taxi team's guidance has been instrumental in my journey, and I'm deeply grateful. I'm excited to share some recent successes with you. Well, I'm going to talk about this stuff or am I? No, I'm not. So let's talk about it now. I'm excited to share some successes. Last 6 months, I've written songs and instrumentals for 7 albums, all for publishers with Taxi. I've had the
Mhm.
privilege of placing 3 songs on the TV soap General Hospital and several instrumentals in reality shows like Call It's and Call It's, Singles Inferno, and Dubai Bling. Additionally, I've secured over 50 instrumental placements across various German and European TV shows. Really looking forward to the upcoming road rally in November. It's always highlight of my year. Don't tell your wife because her birthday and your anniversary should probably be the highlight. But anyway, can't wait to see what this rally brings. And if I remember correctly from reading your bio when you sent it over the other day, now you're up to like 300 instances of your music being used over the last 2 years. So congratulations for that. And I have very little doubt that we'll be hearing about a lot more of those, I'm sure, in the years ahead.
Yeah, I hope so.
So I want to thank Liz. She was actually the one who said to me, hey, you know Will Derryberry, don't you? I almost said
Yeah,
Dingleberry.
oh yeah, come on, baby.
I said, yeah, of course I do. And she goes, why don't you do a passenger profile with him? So
Yeah.
thanks for doing it. And thank you to Liz for suggesting it. Um, and I saw, as we were talking about before, on your LinkedIn page, that you share something with at least a few handfuls of members,
Hmm.
that you are a worship director at Life Community Church. They obviously are different churches, but it's so funny. We have Taxi members, computer programmers, and worship
Yeah.
leaders. Those are like the two prominent jobs that people have that join Taxi. So,
Hmm.
how did you go from being that guy and the guy who was out there touring for 20 years and producing independent artists and stuff? What brought you to Sync and then ultimately to Taxi?
Yeah, hold on. I got this weird like Java thing that just came up. Okay, let me get rid of that. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I started out as a musician that was traveling around doing music all over the US, and in a little trio. We did kind of like this bluesy kind of blues rock thing back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I had just been newly married, and I didn't really enjoy the traveling a whole heck of a lot. And being away from home and being newly married, I'm like, I got to figure out a different way to do this. And at that time, I had actually been good. It's kind of an interesting way that we did this when we were traveling around. Is I would go out and play at a nightclub or a bar on Saturday night. Then we would wake up Sunday morning early and go lead worship at a church. So it was
At
like
different church in different
it was one
cities?
extreme to another. Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, in the same city, it was actually a pretty cool way to just embrace community. We but definitely saw both sides of the community, going into a pub or a nightclub one night and then going into a church the next day. But it was really interesting in that regard. But I was really getting sick of being away from home, and so I had decided to kind of put my roots down in the city that I was living in and take a position at a church leading worship. I've always been kind of the person that's been super creative and likes to spend time in the studio. And so, yeah, I mean, that's always been kind of the big piece for me, is I could spend hours and hours and hours in the studio creating this or that, and loved learning new things and refining it and experimenting. And so it made a whole lot of sense when I ended up making some connections with doing music in regards to production music. So, and there's an interesting story behind that.
Lay it on me.
Okay, so and I know you were going to ask me this, but in 2007, I can't even remember how it came to be, but I found Taxi.
Okay.
It was probably something online, somewhere I found out about it. I read something about it. I thought, oh yeah, I think I could probably do something like that. Totally naive. I didn't know anything. But I knew that I loved to write songs and create and all that kind of good stuff. So I signed up and I stupidly, I mean, I know you hear about this a lot. I'm going to give it 1 year. I'm going to
Right.
give it 1 year, I'm going to give it 1 year, and then
Classic.
we'll just see what happens after that. Right. And so I went into it not really having any intentional real goal of like, what does success look after a year that would make me want to go another year. Right. So I didn't really have anything like that. So I went in there and I don't know this for sure, but I ended up getting a couple forwards. I don't remember what song. It's been too long ago. But I got a call back from a publisher, and I won't name who it is, but and she had said, yeah, this is how this works. And I was totally, again, naive about and ignorant about how this all worked. And so I said, okay, let's do this. And she ended up giving me some really big placements, like pretty immediately,
Wow.
on some big primetime shows. It was vocal music. It was music that I had written that's kind of singer-songwriter type stuff. And anyways, yeah, it was like some big shows like Friday Night Lights. This was in 2000. Now it was probably 2007, 2008. Friday Night Lights, another NBC drama, Life, and some other shows as well. And I think they paid really well. But I'm like, that's it's too far in few between for me to really spend my time doing this.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of like went, here's the other thing too. I didn't know, like, it's so important as a songwriter to have many different avenues that you can,
Right.
and publishers to
Multiple
know and have
streams of
next, yeah,
income.
all tons. And so I had this thing, I don't know, it was just my own assumption that no, I've got to be loyal to this one publisher, right? And it was just so dumb, so stupid.
But
And
a lot of people make that mistake because
yeah,
it's kind of like meeting the person that becomes your wife or your husband, your spouse.
yeah,
You do feel loyalty because the attraction is mutual and the commitment is mutual. But I
yeah,
always say to people, advice my dad gave me when I was a teenager, don't fall in love with the first girl you kiss. Pretty good advice.
hmm,
Um,
yep.
Especially considering the first one I married it didn't work out. I should have listened to my parents. Anyway, um, the point being, I understand it why people feel that way. It's
Yeah,
like somebody gets me, so you want to be
yeah,
loyal back to them. But as you've figured out, and I'll let you say it because I'm not the
yeah.
one getting interviewed. What did you discover?
Sure. So yeah, so I actually worked with this company for probably up until about 2011, and just little things here and there. I didn't really put a whole lot of weight into really pursuing that full steam ahead. So anyways, and I still I still call her and talk to her and see what they're up to. But nonetheless, so I kind of got away from it, and then it was right around COVID time, just a little bit before COVID hit. And I read an article, and I believe it was from, I think you wrote it. It was about, I think the headline was, what do musicians do when they retire, or something like that, to that effect.
Right.
This was like 6 years ago, 7 years ago that this came out.
I
I can't
remember
remember.
writing an article about how sync writing music for sync is a great better
Yes.
investment portfolio than stocks actually.
Okay, so yeah, that's what I read, and so the things that you had mentioned in there was, I mean, it was a great position, kind of essay, kind of writing, and so I'm like, oh yeah, I think I'm gonna give Taxi a try again. And at that time, um, you guys had started pumping out a lot more educational information for people to kind of absorb and process. You had Taxi TV going, all that sort of stuff that wasn't around back in 2007.
Right.
And so I just started, watching everything and writing things down and getting books like, Steve Barton's book,
Dean
Grappane's
Griffin.
book.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm like, okay, I think I've got a handle on this. I think I can figure this out. I've already got my chops in and around producing and being able to listen and be able to create templates so that I can create music around some different genres, right? And so the first year, and I actually feel bad for your listeners because I probably sent in 3 songs a week when I first came back. So I came back, it was like 2020, whatever, 2019, whatever it was. But I was like, okay, I know that I've got to get a lot of songs out there. I've got to do it high quality. And, um, and so I'm just going to unleash here this first year. And I know I'm going to get a lot of returns. That's okay. I'll learn from that, of
Well,
course.
at least you had a good
Um,
attitude about it.
yeah, I knew that I'd probably, but I also knew that like this is what it's going to take to continue to move forward and plow forward and get further along quicker than if I'm just sitting there painstakingly trying to go through everything again and again and get it just right. So I moved through it pretty quickly, and so I knew going into it that this was a marathon type uh, um, thing to pursue with
Yeah.
Taxi and with sync music. And so I just went with it and tried to stay patient. And it was probably 2 years before I really started. I started getting connected with publishers by that time, but it was about 2 years before I started seeing anything come through as far as any royalty. And then it was probably year 3 that I started seeing things come up into the ASCAP queue,
But you hung
the
in there.
queue.
That's the important part because it's
Yeah.
kind of like becoming a Navy SEAL. A lot of guys would like to be a Navy SEAL. The minute they throw them, in, offshore San Diego, whatever the base is down there, holding
Yeah.
onto that log for 24 hours out there in the freezing cold water, a lot of people wash out and hear the sound of the bell.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
analogous to members that get into sync. Whoa, somebody loves me. I got signed to this catalog. I got signed in that catalog.
Hmm.
Oh, I got a placement. But now it's been 2.5 years and I've gotten $67.14. This is never going to work out. But it's the guys that hang in for 5 and 10
Yeah.
that end up turning it into a living.
Yeah. And I noticed the last time that the last rally, meeting some of those folks where I'm like, they're more artist focused as far as like, indie artist focused.
Right.
And I'm like, well, that's great. I mean, there's a lot that indie artists can get from the road rally. But then there's those that are more the production route that I'm going, okay, they're gonna those I think it's good to be able to go into something and have a well-defined idea of yourself and knowing how to approach that. And I think sometimes people get into it, let's say the indie artist that goes, well, I want to dabble in production music and try to do that. And the reality is know that you're like it's going to take some time. So you might you
Yeah.
might want to consider like figure way the balance is because you might want to actually stay in the indie realm if that's what fills your sales, so to speak. Because yeah, man, if you're not into the production realm and you start messing with it and think, okay, I'm going to do this, kind of like me the first year I tried it, and then stopped in 2007, is that yeah, you're gonna move into this and go, I forget it, I'm done. But that
Yeah.
happens, and those who go like, no, I'm actually really passionate about this, and you can take the bumps and bruises and the rejections along the way, have got the better chance if you just keep staying the course. So, but it's amazing. It's amazing how there's a lot of different people and different things that are available to people through what you guys are doing too. So, yeah.
I know them all and I know their personalities and I think that's why Taxi has been in business for 32 years is that we keep a singular focus but understand that there's a range of people within that focus. We don't try to be
Yeah.
all things to all people.
Yeah.
Um, but it's funny. My dad, who said to me, don't fall in love with the first girl that kisses you back," also said to me, "If you treat something like a hobby, it's going to pay you like a hobby." I
Yeah.
made that
Oh
point.
yeah.
You can't dabble. You wouldn't dabble at being an investment banker. You wouldn't dabble at being a Porsche mechanic. You wouldn't dabble at being a
Yep.
PGA touring golf pro. All those things to be successful require persistent work, long
Yeah.
hours, but it will pay off.
Yeah, I know that some of the things that I've done in approaching this is, creating SMART goals. I don't think you've ever mentioned creating SMART goals on Taxi TV,
No.
um, but it's goals that you can actually go into and you can measure. You're basically going through. You have time limits, deadlines on them. They're very intentional and can
Is
help you. You
this
can actually.
a software program or a
No, no,
website?
it's like a
Oh,
lot of corporations use it, but they're called SMART goals.
making a note.
And yeah, yeah, and I mean it's super helpful to keep you on task and it keeps you on relevant goals too. But I mean, you could even go to Chat GPT and say, I want to make a goal for this and using the SMART goal technique, and
Ah,
it'll write stuff up for you. It'll help you do it even. But yeah, I think those things kind of help too, especially for those of us who are on the creative side, heavy, that they kind of get a little wax poetic in how we want to accomplish things and have a hard time staying on task. So I mean, they're super helpful, and I would actually tell folks that are musicians that are trying to get better at staying on task, especially in the area of production music, that those can be very helpful to keep you on task. So SMART goals, they're really helpful.
I should talk to you after we're done with the interview about teaching a class on staying in the game by having SMART goals at the Road Rally. Would you be willing to teach a class?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Not
Yeah.
that I'm putting you on the spot by
No, no,
being live on camera or
that
anything, but well,
no, that would be cool. It's funny. As we were kind of getting prepared for doing this video here, I was thinking about another area that has to do with briefs,
yeah.
taxi briefs, or any briefs for that matter from publishers and all that. And it's and how difficult it can be to decipher exactly what it is that the briefs are asking.
Yeah.
And so I stumbled onto something that I'm just like, oh my gosh, I think this could help a ton of people. Can I share it with you?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so you know how the taxi briefs have how they're written out, it's bold up top. It kind of gives you the headline. This is what it is. It's like a stomp clap rock thing, and maybe it has a 10,000 up to $10,000 payout or whatever, so those okay, so don't read those parts as a don't read that section. Just don't even look at the genre. Just go onto the page, skip that part, go right to the brief, the stuff that's not in boldface, right?
Okay.
Go straight to the brief and start reading it. And then when you get to the links where it's the
The
songs,
references. Yeah.
don't look at those either. Just don't
Wow.
even read those. Go and then finish the brief, okay?
Okay.
And then I love the briefs that you guys leave where it gives you, especially when it's TV stuff, where it's like it gives you a little bit of the scene, with the characters.
Right.
And so what you do as the reader is you skip the stuff at the top, don't play the clips or any of that kind of stuff, the examples, and then sit with that brief and try to create what you're hearing in your mind when you read that based off of the brief description.
Yeah.
Try to and take that scene, that how that feels, the mood of it, the sound, put it over here, and then go back and have a good picture of that in your mind. Then go back up and listen to the first example. And does what you have in your mind go with what you heard on that first example? And if it does, you're probably onto something. And it's probably worthwhile to actually take that and spend some time and record something that goes with it. If it doesn't, then maybe, you from a positive point of view, you could say, well, maybe I can learn how to do this. Maybe it's something I won't trust myself to go like, oh, and puts all this weight on like, oh yeah, why didn't I get forward? No, because it didn't really sync up in your mind when you first read it,
Yeah.
right? And so yeah, go through this instance. If it's linking up, man, go for it. I mean, it just seems to make more sense. And then go back and you can read the boldface. But for me, I've started kind of doing that. And if it actually aligns with that first example, when I've taken just even a minute to 30 seconds after reading it,
Yeah.
I'm like, yep, I'm gonna give that a go.
It's
So
amazing how much evidence we see at Taxi, the screeners specifically see people that just don't nail the brief. And it's like, did you read this thing? We actually get members that will complain, you guys need to provide more detail. And it's so funny because the industry people, the library owners and music supervisors that see the Taxi listings,
yeah.
like, I should pay you guys to write mine. Yours are so much
Oh
better
yeah.
than what the
Taxis
industry puts out.
Taxis are really good. I've worked with some other publishers that are not very good. I'm like, I don't, that's not even a complete sentence. I don't know what that is.
Right.
But taxis are really good. And I would also say that like well, what was it? Like the bold marquee sort of headlines are
Yeah.
great, but I can see why. I mean, I've had this happen to me too, where I read that and I'm like, stomp, clap, rock, pop, this payout, I can do it. Boom. Yeah, I rush into it. It kind of creates an impulsive reaction to just get going with it rather than going, don't go there first. Just read and see what happens if you can get that
Yeah.
sound in your mind and see, and then go back to the example and see how well that blends. If it doesn't, maybe
You
it's not the song to spend time on.
a very optimal phrase. 5 minutes ago, you used the phrase, does it go with it? And
Yeah.
so that's the thing. A lot of people listen to the references and think that they're supposed to create something that is like the references. Really, what the goal is to triangulate. Are they all around 122 BPM? Are they all positive? Are they all major
Yep.
chords?
Yep.
Do they all have an uplifting, positive sounding melody? Look for those similarities and then ask yourself, is this thing that I'm thinking about creating or that I just got halfway through creating, does it sound like it would go on a playlist with them? That is the ultimate goal, not to try and
Yeah.
create a
Yep.
different version of whatever song. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that that would be an interesting approach for people to
Yeah.
take because
Yeah.
you're right. There are some members that see that headline in bold and go, "I've got a country song with a female vocal."
Impulse.
That's as
Yeah. You
far
just,
as they get,
yep.
and then they don't understand why they didn't get the forward. And it's like
Yeah.
anybody with any amount of objectivity would read the listing, listen to their music, go, I would never forward this for that. But somehow it got by them.
Sure.
Um, well, thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah.
You mentioned in your bio, it uses the V word, as I call it, versatility. And I just did
Yeah.
a Taxi TV last Monday where I was talking about versatility, and I said, it's a bad thing.
It's a four-letter word, isn't it?
Well, it is on a first date. Like when you
Yeah.
like you
Yep.
walk up to somebody at the road
Mm-hmm.
rally, you go to grab a beer at the lobby bar, and there's a library owner there, and you say, "Hi, my name is John Smith, and I am the most versatile composer
Yeah.
you've ever met. I do rock, I do pop, I do country." I literally have had
Yeah.
industry people say to me that is the biggest red flag they ever
Yep.
hear. But once they get to know you and
Yep.
know that you are serious and that you're quality minded and know that you can deliver the goods, at that point, it's okay to say I'm versatile because they know you and they believe you. So
Yeah.
it goes from being like something that makes people run away to something that makes people be attracted and
Sure.
wanting to work with you.
Yeah,
Um,
on my website, and yeah, I never bring that up when I'm talking to people. There's no way that I'm going to say, "Hey, I'm Mr. Versatile." That just one sounds super narcissistic, and it just sounds amateurish, like you said. But yeah, I remember this was I think a couple of years ago. I was hanging out with sorry about the dogs. Uh, I was hanging out with Pedro and his team and just talking about music. And I can't remember if it was George. Anyways,
Yeah.
um, but they were saying, "Oh yeah, you're super versatile." And I'm like, "Oh, isn't that not a good thing?" I'm like, "No, no, that's great."
Yeah,
And
because
so
they knew
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, like on my website, I do have it on there, but I also have examples of
Yeah.
all these other
Oh, yeah, you
things
look
that I've done.
credible on the website.
But yeah, I don't like to throw that around either. It's just kind of a tacky word, four-letter word.
Well, if you're brand new to the game.
Yeah,
Have you ever
yeah.
heard my story about me mentioning the V word and doing a one-man seminar in Chicago in front of 300 people?
No.
Okay, I'll keep this clean in case anybody's watching. But I was doing my shtick on never use a word that starts with the letter V because it'll
Yeah.
make people think you're an
Uh-oh.
amateur.
I can
Does
already see where
anybody in
this
the
is
room
going.
know what I mean? And it's like 10-year-old kid stands up on his chair all the way up against the back wall of the ballroom and he goes, I know.
Oh
All right,
no.
kiddo, what's the word? And he coughs up a word that describes a
And he
male
said
body
the
part.
word. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody, I mean, people were literally falling out of their chairs. It was the funniest thing that's ever happened
That
to me.
sounds like something out of a Mel Brooks movie.
It was. It was a pretty special moment. Here I am still talking about it 20 years later.
Oh, that's funny.
Um, let's go back to you being versatile. I remember it sounds like, country Americana singer-songwriter, that kind of guitar-oriented stuff. It's kind of your home base, if you will.
Sure.
How do you approach learning other genres? I also saw that you can do orchestral hybrids and stuff. That's a pretty,
Yeah.
far gap between wham, 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 wham,
Yep.
wham, and an
Yep.
acoustic with a bottleneck to then go orchestral. How
Yep.
did you make that transition specifically, and how do you learn other genres? What's your process?
I actually had, and you know this, but I have a a relative that owns a virtual library company for virtual instruments and loops and all that sort of stuff. And so he always gave me like just screaming deals on all of his plugins. And so I would try out different things because it didn't cost me a whole lot of money. And quite honestly, I learned a lot from the different instruments that I got from him.
Okay.
And over the years, I learned how to manipulate them. And like when you get like for instance, like when I got my first guitar, it was kind of like a cheapo. I couldn't do much with it. There was a limit to what I could do. Because it could only give you such a sound, and then you just realize, yeah, this sounds like a $30 guitar. But then you graduate up, you get better instruments, and you actually begin to expand and get better because the instrument can actually do more for you because it's a
Hmm.
better quality. Well, in getting quality virtual instruments, I was able to like get some of these symphonic type instruments and really listen to them apart from everything else. Let's say that would be involved with other instruments and just hear them in their entirety in isolation, and it just helped train my ear. And so being able to do that with really quality virtual instruments, and then being able to really just be a student of people that do that sort of thing, like let's say an orchestral hybrid or a tension piece, and be able to go, oh, okay, I've already trained my ear on how to hear things in isolation, and for whatever reason, and being able to do that, I was able to pick things out in a group of instruments because I've already trained myself on how to hear things in isolation. So I was able to pull things out and go, oh, yeah, I know what that is. I know how to get that to swell right here and not sound like a fake string or whatever. So it was just a matter of time. I mean, just doing it over and over and over again. I mean, just the hours spent working with different types of genres of music. One, because I appreciate other genres of music other than just what I'm naturally good at. Because I grew up, my dad was he loved the blues. And so I grew up listening to blues. So it just came more natural to me as a younger musician. But yeah, as I grew as a musician, so too did the type of music I liked. And so, yeah, just spending time with it and having that ability to hear quality music, instruments in isolation really helped me a lot.
It's impressive that you invested the time because so many people, we look, these things are, well, there it is. These are evil.
I
They have,
know.
as if we didn't already have this desire for like an instant answer to everything in
Yeah.
life, you know,
Yeah.
and nowadays everything is pretty instantaneous, and we've lost our ability to focus on anything that's longer than what a goldfish might remember. And it sounds, I think that people that delve deeply into it and do that self-training, that I don't know if it's a personality type or a commitment or whatever it is, everything can be learned if you're just willing. It's a golf swing. You cannot go
Yep.
out and compete against Tiger Woods because you play twice a month with your buddies while sucking down a Budweiser on local 9-hole course. You know, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
not going to happen. But
Yep.
if you go hit balls for 8 hours a day and play around after that and do that six or
Yep.
7 days a week for 10 years, maybe you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I do have the personality for sitting in a studio for hours on end and just being like, what happened to the time? You
Yeah.
know? So for me, it makes a whole lot of sense. I've always loved doing that and just investing my time in learning how things are supposed to sound. And yeah, just really grateful that I was able to get a lot of that stuff early on and learn. So